Not to say that it's anyone's fault.
It's completely my
Except,
fault, like 100% my fault in every
Yeah.
way. Alright, so we are now live, and we're in the
Are
right
we?
places.
Okay.
excellent.
Okay.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press the intro button and see if it breaks, because it can't get worse at this point.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. Alright,
I'm gonna refresh the stream and see if I can actually see us.
okay.
Oh, hey! Yeah, there we are. Alright.
Alright, you're gonna be
Excellent.
like... Keep in mind, you guys, that while the intro is running, I'm gonna say this just on stream, because everybody can, you know, you guys are not gonna be muted. So you can laugh about Cedric dancing, but you'll be like 5 seconds behind.
So we'll just sound like we're insane.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, I don't even have the intro. Alright,
Don't need it. Don't need it.
we're live. Go, Adam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well-
Don't blame this on me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, August the 6th, and welcome to Gamestate number 3. I am your host, Adam, a winner is you, Ragsdale, and these are my lovely and attractive co-hosts, poker pro and magic aficionado, Stephen Joanrub Slavel,
Hey guys.
event coverage manager, something like that, a man whose title I can never remember, Glenn Jones,
Right here. Well,
and longtime Magic Pro, Cedric Phillips.
Hello, hello, hello.
So today we're going to be covering the one major Magic event which happened in the last week. We're right in the middle of sort of an extended dry spell in terms of Grand Prix, but will just be Star City Games DC, Washington. And we will also be touching a little bit on Magic coverage in general, I believe. And if possible, we might touch a little bit on the sort of modern legacy debate. We'll see if we have enough time to get there. But we're going to have a little bit of a light show today, and hopefully it will run better than the intro, which ran not at all. So without any further ado,
100% my fault. Send me
We
all
will-
the hate mail.
we will head directly into the standard portion, I think, of the Star City Games DC.
sweet.
So Star City DC was just sort of to start it off. It was won by one Reed Duke, which those of you who have paid attention to Magic in the last 2 years will probably have heard of. He was playing a Wolf Run with Blue Deck, which if you tuned in last week, you may have heard someone was discussing in slightly less than glowing terms. There were a lot of Delver of Secrets in and around the top 8 and also sort of the top 16 and the top 32. And the top 4 of that event was full of very, very good players. The top 4, just to read them off before we get there, were Ben Lundquist, Charles Gindy, is that correct? How do
Yeah,
Gindy?
Yeah.
Gindy, yeah. Josh Cho and Reed Duke were the top 4 people, so people who are very well known in the Magic scene and have been doing very well for a fairly extended period of time. So let me pass it off to, I guess we'll start with Cedric on this topic. Do you think, for the first question, do you think this is the best Star City top 4 of all time?
Man, it's close because there was one in California that had Kibler, Prozac, Matt Nass, and Alex Bertoncini. Ooh, I said it. So it's pretty close. I mean, that top 4 is comparable, but I think that this top 4 is better, right? Like, there's a Pro Tour champion, even though Kibler's a 2-time champion. There's a Pro Tour top 8er in Josh Cho. There's Reed Duke, who is just unbelievably good at Magic. He just hasn't broken through yet on the Pro Tour. And then there is Ben Lundquist, who, when he's the worst player in a top 4 of a group of 4 people, that's insanity, because Ben is so good. I think this one's better, honestly. I really do. Like, this tournament, I'm pretty sure was bigger than the tournament those guys top 8. I know this was like a 600 and some person tournament. 10 rounds, and those 4 guys made it through. Yeah, I think this one is better. This top 8 was incredible, and I was even a little bit more surprised to see that Reed was able to make it through with 3 Delver decks and then his little brew. So I think, yeah, I would say yes, it's the best top 4, top 8, whatever.
Let's go to Glenn last. Steven, you get to go now.
I don't have much to add to that. I'll agree with Cedric that it's the best. As far as Reed not having the accomplishments, I was like sitting at Worlds with Reed right after he won the MTGO Championship online Watsumadoozle. And the point was raised that that was, I believe, actually the largest amount of prize money given out for a match of Magic in history. If you think about, you get the auto qualification to the tournament at Gen Con the next year, plus the, $20 bazillion or whatever it was for first place this year. So when you're talking about him not having accomplishments, man. I guess like the Pro Tour is the big deal and all, but that's a lot of prize money to gather already. Yeah, I'll agree completely that this top 4 is stacked and insane.
All right, Glenn, do battle.
I have obviously been at a lot of these top 4s, and I was actually at this one, though I wasn't working the event. And the one Cedric brought up is the closest one I can think of to being like of a similar tier. That was San Jose in 2011, I'm pretty sure. But I do believe that this one is a little more impressive. I think these players are all just excellent. I pegged Reed as, in a conversation, like probably the best player in the room, and if not the best, then definitely like in the conversation for it. And I mean, he won the tournament, so that's nice. But everyone else was very good. 2 of them were playing with the new Delver deck with Hero Blade Holds, demonstrating that like that might actually just be what's correct. So I think not only was it just like 4 really good, talented players, but the lists were also like interesting and demonstrative of the metagame at large, which made it even better. So the last one was like right before Callblade broke, and was just like 2 boring old rug decks that weren't ready to get browned yet, which changed. But other than that, yeah, I agree. I know we all agreed, so that makes it dull and boring. But oh well.
The only point I wanted to bring up in closing was that I think the previous top 8, like the Madness, Kibler, Prozac, top 4 or whatever, is the one that has more accomplishments, like on their resume at the time. I don't think that's really close. Like I think the Kibler Madness one had more accomplishments. I think that this one is probably the one that I personally would say is scarier. But I think this is like a really great sort of podcast, like sort of internet fairy discussion, because you can never demonstratively prove the other guy wrong. Like no one's ever going to come up and be like, oh, I've done the math, you're actually like the other one was better. So
there's also always the like for the time clause where like it's understood that Magic players get better, so some dude can explain to you that 14 years ago this guy who was playing 20 land, 20 spells, 20 creatures, which ironically is the best deck in like standard, modern, and legacy right now.
Yeah,
but
sounds like a Delver deck.
But he can argue that someone playing 4 Shivan Dragons and that like recipe was, one of the best players in the world and therefore the scariest top 8 of all time, I think that like as far as the present day, yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, and I guess I don't want to say I forgot about Reed's accomplishment, but when like with winning the Magic Online Championship Series, but just when I think of accomplishments, and this is how most Magic players look at it, you look at a top 8 at Grand Prix, top 8 at Pro Tours, wins in those particular tournaments and that sort of thing, because like a lot of people, some of like the higher pros like a Luis Scott Vargas and Jerry and like people like that, they don't play in the Magic Online Championship Series, not to like diminish Reed's accomplishment or anything, but that's not often looked at as like a huge accomplishment. Maybe when it should be, as you said, Stephen, yeah. because of like how much money it gives out and that sort of thing. But I mean, Reed still has a Grand Prix win. I think he has 3 GP top 8s, and he's won the championship series. So I mean, obviously he's no slouch, and we'll be talking about that later. But I wasn't trying to diminish what he's done or who he is.
I hope so. I hope this can just be like Reed Love Hour.
I don't mind.
Is there any hour that is not Reed Love Hour?
Yeah.
I don't.
I sleep from like 4 a.m. to midday.
I wanna move on to chewing over the actual decks because I think there's a lot of sort of interesting variation on already established archetypes at this tournament. But the first one I want to go over is to revisit Reed Duke's Wolf Run with Blue deck, because we spent a sort of extended period talking about how this deck should never win a match last podcast. That may be a slight exaggeration, but there were some negative things said, and he murdered everyone. So what do you guys think? Let's run it back in reverse order. Glenn, you get to start. How do you feel about Wolf Run Blue now that it has the chips?
Okay, well, yeah, talking about rug decks again, I guess. But we've changed a few cards from last time. Not a lot. The overarching idea of the deck is still basically the same, and some of the things that I liked about it have been kept intact. I think the mana base improved a little bit there from the last list we were looking at. I really like the Snapcaster Mage, and I think not only is like a bullet Snapcaster Mage like totally fine in this kind of strategy, but I think that this is sort of the role we might see Snapcaster Mage taking in the future. If, as weird as a call-out as that is, but like, you know, he's not a core engine aspect of this deck the way he is in Delver and the way he is in like Legacy decks, which is how we've started seeing him. But here he's just like one of many good things you can do that like has some synergy and value attached to him. And he's basically just like an extra Solemn Simulacrum with some upsides in different categories. So I think that's pretty cool to see for pretty much the first time, and I hope we will again. I actually was at SCGDC playing, and in preparation I considered going with Primeval Titan. Reed's article was really convincing on the topic when I read it this week, and then I played against the deck sometimes with some of my other decks, and I noticed that all the ways I was skewing my deck to try and beat these stupid elf decks and Delver decks was making me worse against these Wolf Run decks. And if everyone else is taking like the exact same line, then you just have a really well-positioned metagame for Wolf Run, which obviously it kind of looks like that's what we ended up with since Wolf Run 1, although I'll point out like he did have to get through Delver decks with Hero Blade Holds, which is like a nightmare card in a lot of ways. But he had Frost Titan, which is an answer that blue offers and red has basically nothing. They're just airballing against it other than like Devils playing it on turn 4 or something if they happen to get there. So that's pretty much, I found Primeval Titan to be better than expected in my testing, and I was considering running Battle of Wits, as we talked about last week, and I ended up not doing it because it was not very fun. I know I'm a wuss, but like it wasn't even that was the reason. Like I was playtesting the deck on Moto, and I was so bored. I was just totally like not enjoying games of Magic, and if I didn't like them on Moto, when I don't have to shuffle, I'm probably not gonna like them when I'm actually shuffling.
Escape while you still can. Oh my god, run for the hills.
So, yeah, but I noticed when playing those decks, like one of the core things I was building into the battle decks I was building was actually like Frost Titan, which with a bunch of clones. Like I had Frost Titans ×4 and like 12 clones in one of the lists, and it was just like very easy to win games sometimes when you're like turn 4 or 5 Frost Titan and then like 2 more on the next turn, and the game's just instantly over because your opponent has no permanence with text. So like, I'm not that surprised to see it emerging here. I think it offers a unique way to beat cards like Hero Bladehold and Birthing Pod that weren't really available in a way that was quite as good for these ramp decks. Like they'd have to main deck junk like Crushing Vines or Dismember, and these cards are fine and playable, but not as good. They don't fit with your core game plan. They're not proactive. They're reactive. So basically, the deck performs better than expected, but you can obviously look at it and see a lot of these things. I know Reed personally like really liked the bonfires, and I talked to him about them on site, and he stood by him over like doing stuff like Whip Flare in the main deck, which is what we talked about, because you know he liked being able to peel for those outs, especially when you have the ponders and everything else in the deck. So
yeah, and Reed plays super tight. He's going to do that better than almost anybody, I think. You going to hand the reins over, Adam?
Yeah, I guess. Well, you get to go next, Steven. I didn't know if you were galloping off.
The coin has dropped. Yeah, I wanted to say that Glenn's point about how people are doing stuff that makes them bad against this deck, I think that's 100% true, and it's a really big deal. If you look at the Delver lists, they're a little bit slower now. Hero of Bladehold is obviously a scary card against some guys, and they're giving up a little bit of consistency and a little bit of speed to have that trump card, which doesn't work against this deck. So you have decks like that, and you have like mono black decks, which are just terrible. You have trading post decks, which are terrible. You have all these other decks in this format, which are terrible, and for some reason people are convincing themselves to play them because Delver isn't as huge a player as it used to be, I think is a large reason that you see a deck like that. And yeah, I think Reed's deck is fairly well poised to take over. I was very critical of it last week, and I'm going to stand by a lot of the things that I said. The one thing I will say that's different from last week I was saying that like a lot of these cards just don't assist you in going 2-4-6, which is what you want to do with the ramp deck. You want to land a giant threat and it wins you the game. I think a lot of the stuff about that is that the way Reed is envisioning the deck is not as like the single threat wins you the game. It's not so much a tooth and nail deck as it is almost a mid-rangey control sort of deck, which is weird to say, but he's looking to be able to still play Magic after he makes this giant threat. He went like turn 4 Frost Titan, turn 5 Primeval Titan, turn 6 Bonfire in game 1 of the quarterfinals, and obviously that's going to beat like any single person, but you have to recognize too that turn 4 Frost Titan on its own isn't. So it's not just a matter of like put the threat out and like in Valakut or in Tooth and Nail, you make the single Primeval Titan get your Valakuts and they're dead pretty much. You make the Sundering Titan Kiki Jiki. Here he's making a threat and then he's still playing Magic because there isn't a threat that just knocks people over completely out of the park in the format right now, I don't think. So that makes, I think, the Ponders and the Temporal Masteries, maybe the Phantasmal Images, a little bit better than I was thinking when I was looking at the list before. I still don't like it that much, but yeah, I don't know. It's a ramp deck. It's a ramp deck in a format where ramp isn't very good, and he's done some weird things, I think, which are probably what you need to do to ramp to make it better. It's a pretty ugly sight to me, but it won. It won, and I'm sure it's got some power there.
So I find this ramp deck interesting because at its core it is just a ramp deck. I would definitely agree with Steven on that. The thing that kind of makes this ramp deck a little bit more interesting is that, you know, if you look at people who just play Wolf Run ramp, a lot of people know how they should go about attacking that particular version of ramp. They're relatively used to it. They know that they have to sideboard Ancient Grudges against it to invalidate Inkmoth Nexus and Kazakh Wolf Run. You know, they need to try to keep Primeval Titan off the board, have a relevant answer for Inferno Titan if they're playing some number of those, and then be prepared for Hunt Master of the Fells at some juncture. And then there's your Slag Storms, there's your Whip Flares, whatever. We've seen this deck for the past year. Everyone is relatively used to it. People have strategies to combat what they're doing. This ramp deck is different in that it has Frost Titan, it has Primeval Titan, it has Thragtusk, it has Bonfire and Blasphemous Act, Temporal Masteries, some avenues of attack that people aren't used to, and people do not adapt on the fly very quickly. So when people were preparing for this particular tournament, while they did know that Reed's deck did exist, I don't think that they really had an idea of what they wanted to do to go about beating it, to be honest with you.
Do you know what to do? Because I don't really know. I was thinking about it, and the only thing I could think of was kill it before it kills you.
Off the top of my head right now, because I haven't sat down with it and like played against it or anything, no, I don't have any idea how I would want to go about attacking this particular version of ramp. Which is why I think Reed had a huge advantage at the tournament. I mean, Reed's going to have an advantage in any tournament that he plays in because he's fucking awesome at Magic. Okay? But, you know, if people don't know how to attack this particular version of ramp, you know, they think they know his numbers, they have a pretty good idea of what he's doing, but at the same time, like, are people sideboarding cards for this particular version of ramp, or are they sideboarding for, like, regular ramp, and then, like, Delver, and then all these pod decks, and they get paired against Reed, and they're like, oh shit, I'm not ready for Primeval Titan and Frost Titan and Bonfire and Temple Mastery. I don't know what to do, you know? So I think that moving forward, people are going to be like, well, this deck's a major player, so let's try to figure out how to beat it and what cards to sideboard against it. Whereas last week, I think, you know, we went over Reed's deck, we kind of critiqued it, said the things we liked, didn't like, but we didn't address how we were going to go about beating it. And I think that's probably what everybody else did too. They were like, "Oh, cool, that deck exists. That's awesome. Whatever." And then this week, Reed's like, "Yeah, it exists, and I just kicked everyone's ass. So, are you guys going to take this into account now in the metagame, or are you just going to keep ignoring it? Because if you keep ignoring it, I don't mind. I'll just keep killing everyone with it."
I think Reed's done a really good job of exploiting the weakness of the metagame right now. It's just lacking the really fast kill you decks.
Yeah, and this is the kind of deck that maybe even Ghost Quarter is good against you, or attacking their mana base is good. Something you can figure out a way to beat this deck. All decks are beatable in standard, but I think the reason that he just got this huge advantage is because people are slow to adapt to wanting to beat something. If I told you Infect is really good, you're gonna be like, okay, that's probably true. I don't give a shit. And then Infect is gonna win the tournament, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do something about it now. But you could have taken the preliminary step of acknowledging it instead of letting it win its tournament, and then it wouldn't have ever been a problem. And I think that's what Reed basically did. Like you guys said, he wrote an article about it,
right?
And then he won the tournament. Shouldn't that just not happen? If he writes an article about the deck, shouldn't everyone be like, holy shit, Reed's writing an article about a deck, let's beat it, or something? Something should happen where he shouldn't just be able to crush the tournament and everyone knows 73 of the 75 cards in his deck because it didn't change very much. So
yeah.
I mean, I think the deck is real. Steven, I understand your complaints to the deck, and I still do kind of agree. The Phantasmal Images feel random. I get the Snapcaster Mages, or the Singo Snapcaster Mage. It makes sense. I actually like the Blasphemous Act a lot because you want a one-of blowout card that no one's ever going to play around because ramp you have to extend into it, obviously, and then to overwhelm it, and then you get Blasphemous Act in for 2 mana, and then they Farseek 2 that turn or something, and it's a complete blowout. There are some things I don't love about the deck. I'm not convinced that the 3-color Glimmerpost deck has good mana.
No. You don't say.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that the 3-color Glimmerpost deck has good mana, but you have to take notice. Even if you want to make the argument of the Star City competition it's not the toughest circuit in the world. At the end of the day, he had to win 10. It was a 10-round Swiss tournament plus a 3-round top 8, and he had to beat 2 very good people in order to win the tournament. So that alone, even if the competition isn't that good, his deck has to be good. That's 13 rounds of Magic. And he won the tournament. I don't care if the people are horrible or mediocre. It's still 13 rounds. So it's something to take note of. I think the deck has to be legitimate.
I have a sort of scattershot of points to sort of bring that discussion to a close. Possibly, I don't know. Maybe people will violently. It's going to be 4 or 5, I think.
All right.
My first one is that just as a general sense, when if perhaps you haven't been talking to Magic players for 5 years, which that's nice for you. You might not be aware that when people say that this deck is horrible, the worst thing they've ever seen in their entire life, and makes them want to vomit, what they actually mean is it's going to win about 45% of its matches against optimal play. And I mean, do you think that's fair?
Or we just don't like it. Either that or it's unfamiliar to us, because we always say we hate what we don't know.
Yeah, that's very true.
There are games where if you hate something, it wins 7% of the time, but Magic is not one of those games. If you think a deck is bad, it can very easily win 40 to 45% against optimal play, and 50 to 60 or more against non-optimal play. So I don't think anyone was trying to say last week that the deck was unplayable. At least I certainly wasn't. I think it's a very solid tier 2 deck. I don't think it's as good as it's been performing, but I think Reed is absurd at playing Magic the Gathering, and that's inflating the performance of this deck. And that's sort of my greater overall stance on the issue. One thing I wanted to ask you guys about, I don't really know Reed personally, and wasn't playing a ton during when he started winning MOCSs, but I know that I have come into contact with him when he is doing things which might not be viewed as perhaps strictly optimal in most formats. He's definitely been casting Death Cloud in Modern on some occasions, when perhaps that was not the ideal strategy. So he's definitely a dude that will do things that just aren't standard, even if
Yeah.
they're not necessarily best, to like explore them, I think.
Definitely, I agree
So-
with that.
So like
I
that's sorry, go ahead.
I think that Reed is very willing to like play Bruce, but like when he does it because he thinks the Bruce can win. Like, you know, when he shows up with the weird deck like the Rug or the Mono Black Pox or the Blue White Lantex, like he's not playing it because, you know, he's one of those guys who's like, yeah, today's gonna be a brew day, you know, I'll just play this one. Like he works on it and he's like, yeah, I think this can win, and then he wants to prove it, and like he did that this week. He almost did it twice. Like
Yeah.
it's just very. He's really one of the more competitive brewers out there. Like, you know, when Sam plays something weird at a tournament, you know, we sit up and take notice, and I think that this is the same kind of thing. Sam Black being who I'm referring to, and it's valid, like, to notice. You should pay attention to those brews because there might be something there. It might not just be a carrion feeder for no reason. Like,
It turns out that carrion feeder is going to stone kill you. But my last sort of related point about this deck is that I know, like, some people have mentioned in the chat that this deck has been around for a while, and I know that this, like, I've played against Wolf Run with blue in it. People have been running this for, like, almost the past year, sort of on and off, just, like, getting unreal greedy with their mana base. They're just like, well, why not Zoidberg in my ramp deck? And the, like, my default strategy for beating them, certainly as an aggressive deck, is they're just going to lose to their mana, like, a fairly high percentage of the time, certainly as regarded, like, as compared against a two-color Wolf Run deck, which already would have draws where it, like its mana didn't sort of get there. You didn't have the green on turn 2, and the double red on turn 3, and then you had all these colorless lands. And, like, you can just kill them a lot of the time, and then if their mana works really well, then they're going to get you some percentage of the time, and you're going to win some other percentage of the time where you actually have to play real games against them. But, like, my experience hasn't been, oh my god, this deck is unbelievable, like, why didn't people pick it up? It's that it's, like, really inconsistent, and sometimes it'll murder you, and sometimes it'll sit there like roadkill, and you will run over it. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, like, the mana's interesting in this deck. Like you don't have to play Spirit of the Suns anymore, so you don't open yourself up to, like, people like boarding in Grudge or, like, searching for their acidic slime or what have you. You know, so, like, you get to play Farseek, you get to play Rampant Growth, you have Solemn, you have Ponder to fix. Like, obviously I give the deck shit because it's, you know, 4-color, it's 3-color, and then it has 6 colorless lands. It's, like, pretty greedy or whatever. But, like I said, once again, 13 rounds, I'm willing to, like, I feel like if the mana didn't work, one, I don't think Reed would play the deck. Two, if the mana didn't work, I don't think that he would have won a 13-round tournament. So, maybe I'm being naive.
Well, like, when I say the mana doesn't work, I don't mean that, like, you can't cast spells, but if you can't cast spells, like, on the turns you want to cast them, like, you just won't beat good draws. You'll beat bad draws, but, like, if you can't cast your 2-drop until turn 3, like, that takes a significant portion of your equity again. I'm not intending to say, like, 40% of the time you keep your hand and you're like, what are these Yu-Gi-Oh cards? I can't cast any of them. Well, like...
2 Force of Will, 3 blue cards, Mutavault, Wasteland.
Oh god, I can't wait to talk about that. Don't spoil it, please.
Yeah. But I just mean you're not going to hit your optimal drops and you're going to die to a good draw. And, like, I think there are lots of scenarios in which you can dodge that in a 13-round tournament.
That's true.
Again, I don't think the deck is unplayable or unwinnable, but I think that definitely does show up. And, like, it's possible the mana has changed since the last set because I haven't played a ton against it. But, like, I think to discount that would also be naive. That's basically where I'm coming from.
Sure. I think what's going to end up happening now, too, because I'm not sure if I can speak for everyone here, but I know for myself I have not played a single game with Reed's deck. I don't know if anyone else here has. Glenn, I know that you test quite a bit.
yeah, I played like a couple of games. Nothing major.
Okay. So, you know, I'm not sure that we have an idea of how the deck plays out, to be honest with you, because I haven't played a game with it. I have what I think is going to happen in my head of how the games will play. And I'm interested to find out if they actually play that way or if they don't. Like, that's the same. That's the reason that I just try every single deck now, and I just don't discount anything. That's the reason I'm playing Infect and Standard right now, because it'd be easy to just discount that deck when you look at a deck list. But then you see how the games play.
Pretty easy.
So, Yeah, it's really yeah.
Adam
I'm sure
didn't
it's
have
very
any
easy.
trouble.
Yeah, but now I see how the games play out with the deck, and I won all my tickets back that I lost over the course of like 2 streams, and I gained like 120 rating points over the course of like 7 hours, and I'm like, oh, this deck's not terrible. That's interesting. I didn't think the games would ever play like this, and like I feel like that's how the games would play with the ramp deck too. We have an idea of like what we want to do. We want to be 2-4-6ing them, but that might not, like, if you don't 2-4-6 them, how does your deck work out? And I think of like all of the ramp decks that, like, if you don't 2-4-6, this is the one that can still play Magic with them.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Amusingly, isn't this deck like super soft to infect? Just as a total coincidence, like, did you like look at the list? Like, it's
Why you gotta spoil everything, Glenn?
It's like, I was also party to one of your matches that you might not have realized on Moto when I was staying at one Louis Laskin Esquire's abode.
Oh yes, I threw that one away.
It was a really funny moment for all of us.
As only I can. That's right. You live and you learn. I'll never make that mistake again.
That is true. I expect you will not.
Hey, I like making mistakes because then I'll never make them again.
Me too. Same reason. It was just very funny because like literally 4 people in the same room just go, "Why didn't he attack?"
Yeah, not small brain. But anyway,
Off topic,
let's get
sorry.
Tough
back,
decisions in
back to
fact,
Magic.
come on.
Shut up!
Yeah,
It's harder than you think.
Can we talk about the match you lost to that 4-mana 2/2 that's like a limited, like uncommon? Can we talk about that match?
I prefer if we just talk about Gold Knight Commander, if that's okay. Can we not?
Can we move on? Let's move on.
Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is the glorious return of Delver to the top. Well, I mean, there were a number of Delver decks in the top 8, but there...
Yeah, so many tokens, Adam. What was I supposed to do?
Literally anything but what you did, Cedric.
Sorry, go ahead.
But moving on to the Delver decks, there were a lot of Delver decks at this tournament. My impression was from watching the coverage just because there were a lot of Delver decks like all over the tournament, not only in the top 8 and the top 32, but like in the lower event as well. And if you bring like 40 to 50% of a metagame like full of a deck, obviously it's going to do well, just through probability. But like there were a lot of different builds of Delver. There were 2 different Delvers wielding horses in the top 8, which I think is awesome. Jindy and Cho were both playing that list, which I assume originated in the same place. I don't know exactly where that place was.
Roanoke, Virginia.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was like a Jindy thing or a Jerry thing, but I assume it was like...
Well, Gindy actually lives in Roanoke now, so yep, it's coming again.
And I know that Lundqvist had a like much lower Delver list that was 19 lands, I think, or was he the 18 lands guy?
That was 18, I think. Except
Yeah,
his
anyway,
list
Lundqvist was
wasn't,
18.
He was a
except his
Pike
list
Delver list
wasn't lower.
that cut some Geists for like Augur of Bolas, and I want to talk about that. And Costa was in the top 16, and he was also like 19 lands, Pikes, and sort of the Yuya-ish go low list, similar to what he was last week, I think. So anyway, there were a bunch of different builds of Delver there, and a whole bunch of different stuff went well, so I want to talk to you guys about how you think Delver is continuing to evolve, which of those you like, which you don't like, and stuff like that. So let us go to... you can go... Yeah, Ced, you can go first. I know that Delver is not your favorite topic, so you can get that out of the way. How do you feel about the Delver lists? Where do you like to live? You still sour about those tokens? Like...
I've moved on. For every loss, there's like 5 wins with Infect, so it's okay. So I think that those who chose to play the horse instead of Restoration Angel or Gindy, Jerry, Cho, those guys, SCG Blue, very smart, very smart. People are auto boarding in Crushing Vines against you now. People might have plummets. People have these just automatic cards they are boarding in against Delver, and Hero just sidesteps all of those things. And with Combust on the decline, Hero is just completely absurd. There's like no Combust, there's no Dismembers, there's like no Beast Withins, so the Horseman himself just gets to give the biggest beatdowns imaginable. And I'm sure that they just rode him, pun intended, to victory. I like that list. What's kind of interesting is like Hero's going to be good for like a couple weeks or whatever. Like, let's put like a 2-week span on it, and then people are going to adjust to Hero, and they're just going to go right back to Restoration Angel. And you get to just play the game. Like, people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to board in like Beast Within or Dismember or like what have you to try to beat Hero Blade Holder, just like augment their deck to try to beat that, and then they're just going to like go to the Era then. Or like go to Stalker Pike or something like that, and then just beat you that way. So with Delver, you're constantly trying to stay one step ahead of the metagame, and then you get to set the metagame for like 2 weeks if you like win the tournament or have like a respectable result with it. And then once people adjust to you, and as we mentioned with like Wolf Run Blue, people adjust slowly. So like once people adjust to you, then you get to go one step ahead again and then reset it again. So you get to kind of like dictate things, which I think is like really interesting actually. The key is to not care about them dictating stuff. Like, to not care about Hero, to not care about Restoration Angel, to not care if it's Pike plus Stalker. You being able to just, like, not have to worry about that, still be fine against, like, all three of those things, and still be able to carry out the game plan of your deck. So I definitely like what Gindy, Jerry, Cho, those guys did this weekend. One thing that's kind of interesting there about their deck, too, is that there's no Moreland Haunts. And I like that a lot, actually. Because like, they don't have any equipment in their deck to make the tokens better. But I think that Moreland Haunts has been pretty bad for a little while now. And so I'm actually pretty glad that they cut it. Because it just doesn't seem very good. Looking at Ben's list, I'm not terribly fond of his 18 land deck. Especially when like Augur is going to find spells since you can't find lands. And like I don't think you want to be pondering for lands. I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the card. So I don't really like Ben's deck list. Love Ben to death, hate his deck. I just don't really like Augur Bolus very much as a card. I think Pike is obviously good in like your all spell deck because he has so many. I would have played 4 Gunshots in this tournament probably, and I don't know. There's just something I don't like it. Like especially like his sideboard, he's got like a Talleyrand in there. His sideboard just seems like very mismatch like together. Like he's got 2 Blade Sponges in the sideboard. Seems like there should be more Geist somewhere. He's got Moreland Haunts, which I don't think are very good. I don't know. I just don't really like Ben's deck, but I mean, more power to him because he won. So I'm no Delver expert. I'm just very good at beating the deck. So that's it for me.
Sweet.
Glenn, you get to Delver sound off now.
Sure, sweet. I play Delver a lot. I find it pretty interesting. And I was testing it a lot before this tournament and decided not to play it mostly because I got tired of trying to make my Geist of St. Trapt actually get through. It was just like physically and mentally exhausting from game to game, just like trying to figure it out. And I weirdly enough, like I really wanted to play Augur of Bolus. I think, and when people have asked me about it, because I played an Augur deck at the tournament, I played like an Esper midrange deck with Augur of Bolus, and he was the primary reason I wanted to play the deck. Not necessarily because like the deck was especially good, because it was fine. But Augur's a really cool card. I think he's very powerful, actually, but I do think he's poorly positioned right now. So it was a concession to me wanting to play with this card that I thought was sweet, more so than I think this card's awesome in the environment right now. But it is a good card in Delver. It lets you do some cool things. Like, you don't have to run 4 gut shots if you have Augurs, because when you're on the draw, the Augur gives you so many redraws at gut shots. So like 50% of the game, he's increasing your equity on having a gut shot in a spot where you really needed one anyway. So I like that aspect of him. And I never thought about cutting the Geist. Like, I actually facepalmed when I saw Ben's deck list for, like, the first time, which was during commentary of another match. And I was just like, I never thought about doing that. Like, I was commentating the Frights versus Delver match, and I literally just saw his deck list on the table and was like, what? So I thought that was cool in that I'd never considered it. I don't know if it's right or not. I think it seems fine, and it obviously worked out for him. Augur becomes very powerful. Everything, I should say, becomes pretty reasonable with a Rune Chanter's Pike. Like, Maritime Guard is quite the beast when he gets like 13 power on the regular. So, and those are the game states I was generating when I was playing like Augur, Bolus, Rune Chanter's Pike decks. I almost played them in my deck for the same reason, the Pikes. Because you can just win games out of nowhere. Your opponent's just beating you up, and then suddenly it's like snag, snapcaster snag, untap snag, Pike, equip, take 14. That's it. Sorry. Like, thanks for playing. So that's the kind of the power Pike makes up for in losing the Geist, which I like. As for the hero deck, which I also think is pretty cool, you have to cut Haunts in that deck because the Caverns are so necessary. Not only do you want Cavern for the Delver mirrors to let you force down hero and tax Vapor Snag on defense, you also are boarding Knight of Glories in their list. Or at least I hope that. I know Gindi was, because we talked about it. And
they were.
you need more white sources to get your Knight of Glories into play against zombies on turn 2 consistently. So you have to kind of board them, and those are faux white sources. Like they obviously they only tap for white mana for some spells, but like they do it for most of the important spells, so you can kind of afford it. I think 4-Knight was too many. I was running 4-Knight for a while, and after playing with it for like a week, I came down to 3. And Gindi said he felt like they were too many too. I don't even know if he played against zombies, but he was kind of mad that he lost a sideboard slot to that 4th 2/1 for 2. So it's a sacrifice you have to make. The most interesting thing I use most interesting pretty loosely. An interesting thing I found about Ben's deck list was his choice to go with 4 Mana Leak, when a lot of people have been trimming down to as low as 1 or none in some instances, but I think that's wrong. And most people are sitting on 3. I think that's where Josh and Gindi were. I'm on Ben's deck list right now, so I can't see for sure, but a lot of people are on 2 or 3 Mana Leaks, and he stuck with 4. And had those augurs, so he has a lot of interesting turn 4s, especially because he has so many 2-drops with like Pike, Augur, Mana Leak. He has a real diversity in the way he can present threats and pace the game. So I liked that aspect of his deck list. I'm glad that Augur Bolas saw some play. I think it's a really cool card. I had a lot of fun casting it, and I don't even mind whiffing. It's like the nicest thing to have an aspect of variance in Magic that's relaxing. It's like, oh, he does that sometimes. I didn't want those cards anyway. It's fine. Like, they were lands. They don't do anything. I've got 26 spells in my deck. The only misses are lands and a couple creatures. It's cool. It's cool. Ship them. So, I think these were some cool evolutions of Delver. I think that, touching on another thing Cedric said, which is, the idea of the best deck, I don't think there is, like, ever a best deck in Standard for more than, like, a week. In this environment especially. So Delver, one of the reasons it consistently earns the title like from week to week is because it's more adaptable than the other decks. Like it flexes better, you can move it in a direction faster, so everything, usually something else usurps the title based on its position against Delver. Most often, that's what happens, I think. So Delver's constantly morphing and something else is coming up to beat the most recent morph, and then Delver morphs again, and that's sort of the cycle you have going. So I don't think it's that Delver is necessarily like the best deck, but it's the easiest to make it into the best deck, if that makes sense, because it's got that powerful core, and you can do a lot of work by changing just a few slots, because the deck has so much dig. It will find the cards, and it will cast them, and they're running them because of the way they impact their matchups. If I'm casting cards that are in my deck specifically to beat you more often than you're casting the cards that are in your deck specifically to beat me, I'm going to win. Like, that's just how it works.
You should be on the tour. So smart.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons Delver's being successful. Like, it's just casting higher impact cards more often. And that's all I'm going to say. That was enough. I talked a lot.
Alright. I'd like to thank my parents. No?
I love Delver. I just love it so much.
I love Delver also, and you two cover that pretty well. I don't have much to say about the specific decks. I want to make one sort of more general point, which you actually already touched on, but it's really cool that we're cutting Moorland Haunts and Geists now. You talk about how flexible Delver is and how that makes it such a resilient deck, and it keeps on coming back and doing this and doing that. Geist and Moorland Haunt have been such a core part. I guess we had Blade Splicer for a while, but for the most part, and Moorland Haunt definitely, these have been cards which you've almost always seen the list, and the idea that we can be cutting even these cards now to be adding different threats, that's really cool. The more people have to adapt to one specific threat, the more that you have Restoration Angel and they need a Plummet or something like that, the more that those other threats are going to become more powerful, and the more used they are to a deck with Moorland Haunts, the more awesome it's going to be to all of a sudden be casting Hero of Bladehold. You never used to be able to do that because the mana didn't work, and I guess until now nobody thought, well, what if we just took all of the Moorland Haunts out, then the mana would work. Because you would just look at them you're an idiot. Delver, come on.
Every time I looked at a one-land Ponder Moorland Haunt hand, I just wanted to jump off a bridge. So it's this hand's keepable with almost everything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I wonder if Reed will pick up Delver and put 4 Glimmer Posts in it next. Who knows?
I mean, you can make the point though. Like, I think that one land Cavern hand is still pushing you off that bridge, but like, yeah.
Amusingly, I
doesn't
actually
feel as bad.
one lane cavern. At the PTQ like 2 weeks ago, I was running like I think I had one Moreland on my deck list to make room for like 2 caverns, and my roommate was even watching me as I kept like cavern Delver or something, and I was just like, yeah, this is gonna get him, and I think it did. I can't really
right?
remember.
Yeah.
I know I got an island at some points.
Delver is a pretty good
Probably.
card. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's okay. I think an interesting thing about Delver now, sorry to cut you off, Adam, an interesting thing about Delver now that I think that we can mostly agree with is that your deck should be blue-white and not like these brews that like blue-red and blue-green Delver. Does anyone agree with that or disagree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Speaking from terms of like equity in matches rather than enjoyment, I'll agree. I still really want to make the terrible blue-red Delver deck, man. So much.
I played the blue-red Delver deck thinking about playing it, and just really disliked it very actively. So I'm not a fan. I haven't played with the actual mono blue list. I still don't like Talrand enough to really want to do it. I know I've seen Shaheen doing good work with that deck list. I believe in it. I've played against it. Like, it's certainly a playable deck, but I'm just not that impressed, and I think that you get a lot more by white. I think especially you get more sideboard cards in white, and touching back on my previous point, like, my sideboard's where I keep all my high-impact powerful cards for specific matchups, and since a lot of the good ones are white, I want to play white so that I can find those cards in those matchups and kill them. So I think that's just a big reason to be white, basically. It gives you all of those cards that the blue decks don't. Like, I don't want to be playing Steel Sabotage, even though I personally like Steel Sabotage a lot. Like, I recognize that they're just better options to beating the matchups. Like, I don't have to do that. It's like just something you can do.
It's a cool thing about playing a zillion cantrips too. You get your sideboard cards more often. But
yep.
Yeah. Go ahead, Adam. Close us out.
Well, yeah, I want to talk a little bit. I find it kind of amusing that the reaction in chat seems to be universal hatred for any discussion about Delver of any kind because people just can't stand the little insectile man. Yeah, the world's tiniest violin. But anyway, I thought I liked the horse variant. I thought that was neat. People who know me know that I love a horse, and anywhere you can put a horse and it works, like I'm all about that. I think it's neat. I think it does interesting stuff, and I'm happy to see it. I was a lot more interested in discussing Lundqvist's list because that one makes a lot less sense to me. And like it's a lot more interesting for me to talk about a deck where I look at it and I think I don't understand how that works at all, as opposed to one where I look at it and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. He's just going to kill people with the horse. Like, so, like my first thought looking at Lundqvist's list was that I don't understand how you can cut Geist in an 18-land Pike variant when like your whole overall strategy is just to kill them like as quickly as possible. And Geist is like the best card in your entire deck at killing them. I think that Glenn's like explanation of like stuff you can do with Pike and like it doesn't actually matter what the creature you put the Pike on is sort of makes sense to me. Like that makes sense to me. The sideboard still doesn't make any sense to me. Like I don't understand when you're ever going to want to board in Blade Splicers and turn into like the grinding deck when you're still on 18 lands. Like I don't understand how you're ever expecting to win the long game there.
I know that Ben had a plan with that for sure. Like, Ben doesn't just jam cards, generally speaking, so I don't know what the plan is. Like, you can board it in against, like, Pod to try and delay the game to a point where you're, like, equipping a flyer with Pike and snagging them out that way, which might be reasonable, but if they're sideboarding Crushing Vines, then you're building towards, like, a point where they'll attain certainty instead of you, and that's not very good. But I'm not sure, like, honestly. I assume he had a reason, I just don't know what it is offhand.
Like, I understand why you sideboard Blade Splicer in Delver decks. I don't understand why you sideboard Blade Splicer in this Delver deck. And like Talrand, exactly the same. Like I understand what it's there for, but I don't understand what it's doing in this deck. So like I'm interested to learn what the reasoning was for a lot of those sideboard cards. But yeah, I mean I think it's interesting and there's a lot of different ways you can go with Delver and I'll talk about like some general conceptions, or my general conceptions about the deck. I think in our next segment, I want to move on from Delver in particular. Is there something I should be aware of? Probably not. Probably yes, but in our next segment, which I think we'll do on the end of this, was someone brought up a question when we were discussing what we were going to talk about today about what we individually think is the best deck in the format, or what we would want to play if we were playing a big tournament, since I think the last PTQs of the current standard format are coming up either this weekend or next weekend, just sort of wrapping the whole current standard environment that we have. So what would each of us do in a big tournament? Why would we do it? What would we be looking for, etc., etc.? So I think that's an interesting and valid question, and you probably will not hear 4 Delvers here. I cannot ever see Cedric playing a Delver. So
couldn't pay me enough.
So why don't we start with Ced, and we'll just say, what would you personally be doing in a big standard tournament in the next couple of weeks?
So it's interesting that you asked me this right now, because I think like if I had to play in a tournament tomorrow, or if I was playing the PTQs this weekend, I would play Infect, and it's like not even close for me. It's like strange because like it changes from week to week, right? Like because of Reed winning, and Reed's deck is going to shift the metagame now, and like a bunch of people are going to be like, holy shit, ramp, yeah! And I'm just going to be like, yeah, turn 1 Glistener Elf, nice deck, idiot, and like they can't beat you. Like, I think that it's just like incredibly well positioned right now to be playing ramp, or excuse me, playing Infect right now. So like if I was playing in a tournament moving forward, I would definitely be playing Infect. Like it's not even close. And I still think that like Bant Pod is like a really good deck. Like I know I made that deck or whatever. Like I think that deck is really good. I think the Delver is really good. I think that I think there's like a million good options. But like the way that the metagame is moving and the way things are changing, like I would be playing Infect, and I think it's good for like a 2-week period. And I know I sent people to PTQs last weekend. With Infect, and like Ben Schwartz lost playing for top 8, and a bunch of my friends in California went like 5-2 or something, and you know I've won like a ton of 8-mans, and the people from California that were testing it like 4-0'd a couple dailies on Magic Online. Like, you know, the deck looks like complete rubbish when you look at a deck list, but like it just plays much better than like anyone gives it any credit for. And if I had to move forward, just like next week, end of the season PTQs, I would be playing Infect because people like aren't prepared to play against it. Like they just don't know like how what the deck is really trying to do, how quickly they can die, that sort of thing, when they should block, when they should not block. And with Reed's deck going to be picking up in popularity, I think it makes the window even larger to play Infect for like these last couple PTQs. That's all. Who's next? And why am I on a win tunnel?
Can I go next? I want to go next. I want to say I would love it so much if Infect just took over the metagame and was everywhere, because I love the way that an Infect deck makes the metagame play. All of a sudden, like, turn 2 matters. And when you look at, like, a ramp deck, it does not. When you look at pod decks, they're all about, like, making turn 2 not matter however they can. I just love the way that a meta full of Infect plays. And if that were the case, I would be trying to make Blue-Red Delver work, because I think Grim Lavamancer does some work there. I think having Burn available against Infect is going to be pretty exciting. And I think the aggro control role is still super, super strong against everybody. Until Infect actually gets there, I'm going to play Blue-White Delver. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but it's the best deck.
You don't have to apologize, Steven.
Yeah, for my part, I don't know 100% what I would play. It would kind of depend on what week it was and what one. You know, like if it was this weekend, I'd probably be playing a Delver deck with Augurs. I might just be trying to make the Esper deck I played work and like trying it with Pipes again, since I didn't do that very much. And I think I have a better idea of how to make that deck play. I was running sort of Feast and Famine, which was fine, but didn't really overperform or anything. So I might be more interested in trying to kill them, which is always a good thing. When they're dead, they don't continue to play Magic, which is nice. So I definitely would be trying to play Augur Pulse. That card's been really fun for me. I like how its resilience to Bonfire of the Damned. Like, it's a cantrip that kind of sits on the board and is a threat as a result of Pike, which is very nice because your opponent has to play in weird ways if they want to play around it, or they have to open themselves up to dying if they don't. And I think generally it's going to be correct for them to open themselves up to dying, which is the position I would like them to be in a lot of the time. I do agree that Infect is actually really well positioned right now compared to how it's been previously. Cathedral of War for that deck is huge to make the mono green version a lot better. I think it deserves respect. Like, it's not a joke deck like some people write it off as. It's real. I was actually talking with Jerry's girlfriend Caitlin plays like a lot of Infect, and she considered playing at SCGDC and wound up not doing that, but was considering Poison, and she didn't like that it felt so all in on Inkmoth Nexus, which I guess is reasonable. Like, the deck's obviously much more powerful when it draws an Inkmoth Nexus, but I think it's fine when it doesn't. Like, people play against it wrong. They do dumb stuff like waiting until your turn to try and kill your creature or whatever. Just very small things that, like, you can get a lot of margin out of. Like, those give you free games. Like, those are games you were going to lose, and they just give them away. And that means you only have to win a certain percentage of the games you were supposed to win because you've got so many freebies coming your way. So I like that aspect of the deck, and I do like how fast it is and how aggressive. It's got a lot of cool stuff. But I would be trying to play Augur Pulse because that's my jam. That's where I'm at right now.
The thing, and I'm gonna jump in real quick. I'm gonna cut you off again. 2 things in a row.
Sorry, I got you in chat. It's all good.
The thing that makes, like, not just Infect, like, interesting, but, like, decks like that. Like, fringe strategies that everyone thinks is stupid or sucks. I don't know, Storm and Legacy, Dredge and Legacy, Storm and Modern. Like, these decks that, like, you just don't want to playtest against. Like, like, I come over to Glenn's house for a playtesting session. I'm like, hey, Glenn, how's it going? You want to test against Infect? And Glenn's like, no, get the fuck out of my house. No.
I'll play test with you. I think that matchup is so much fun. Like, anything against Infect is so much fun.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
I'm a sicko, I guess.
My overall point is, like, no one's gonna go like, hey man, I want to play test. Like, what decks do you guys want to jam against each other? It's like, well, let's try Reed's deck. Reed won the tournament. Let's try that. And it's like, well, I have like this Infect deck. Do you guys want to play against that? It's like, no one wants to play against Infect, dude. Like, get out of here. Like, hey, do you want to test against Storm and Legacy? Fuck no, I don't want to do that. Of course not. That's not fun at all. And then they don't know how to beat the deck as a result of not testing against it. Like Glenn said, like Glenn said, like, they're gonna gut shot like your guy on your turn, and then you're gonna be like, yeah, mutagenic growth it. Like, what are you doing? I don't understand why you would do that now. And then you're just gonna get these free ones that you have no business getting. And I think, like, that's part of the reason that the deck is well positioned right now, is because people look at Infect as like a stupid fringe deck. They're not going to test against it because, like, it's very obvious what they're doing, so I can figure out how to beat it. And then they just, like, do everything wrong against it, and then they get mad when they lose to, like, Titanic Growth. And it's just fantastic.
In fairness, Titanic Growth is like a terrible card.
Yeah, well,
it's so much!
It's so much poison!
Have you seen how big that, like, wolf and or hamster or whatever it is on that art is? Like, the trees are, like, down here. It's crazy, man. It's huge.
I mean, if Titans are playable, Titanic Growth has to be, like, at least reasonable. That's just logical. Like, that's how adjectives work, Steven.
That's how adjectives work. Logically. Alright.
Can we rename that card Make Titan? I will make Titan! I was thinking for quite a bit, actually, about, like, what I thought the best deck was and why I thought it was, like, what it was, and, like, why I would be playing what I would be playing. I think, without a doubt, what I would be playing if I were playing in a big tournament is some Delver variant, probably blue-white. But the reason I would be playing that, I think, is a little bit more interesting, or at least it's more interesting to me. What I'm looking for in a deck to be playing at any big Magic tournament, in Standard especially, is I want to have a powerful, proactive plan, and I want to be able to minimize the number of games where I'm not playing Magic because of Mana Screw or Mana Flood, or, like, for whatever reason, I don't get to interact with my opponents, so we're not making meaningful decisions, and we're not, like, playing Magic in the traditional sense. And I think Delver is far and away the deck that is best at doing those things. Like, it has the best library manipulation in the Ponder, Snapcaster, and like Thought Scour / Gitaxian Probe cantrip suite that allows you to make meaningful decisions on the first few turns of the games. It plays very well from one land. It can play reasonably well from like 5 to 6 lands. And it plays... Like, it sort of came up for me. I know last week, Glenn, you mentioned that you felt really uncomfortable playing like super long games with Delver because you felt like you hadn't tested enough, and it just like exposed your not understanding. And I think I feel like exactly the opposite. Like, I really enjoy playing games where I felt like I made the most number of meaningful decisions. Like, I just want to be the biggest, like, standard, always plays the known best deck, and just make those decisions absolutely correctly. Like, play that deck until I'm making the decisions correct in every single way. I want to be like Reed Duke, basically, except playing a better deck.
I mean, I want all those things, you know, but I want a lot of things.
That's why I think I would be playing Blue-White Delver. And yeah, that's what I think I would be doing. And I'm not sure if that's because I honestly think, like, it's the best deck, because I don't think it's, like, clear-cut anymore. Like, I think there are a large number of decks which are all within a few percentage points as being, like, the top of the field, and it's going to change from week to week based on, like, what cards are in your deck and what's in your sideboard and stuff. But I'm not sure if I'm playing that because I think it has the best expected value, or because I think that it's what I personally want to be doing. And that's kind of weird to me. So, I thought that was interesting.
Cool, yeah. Just talked about standard for an hour. How did we do that?
It's a fantastic format. It wasn't hard.
Yeah, it's a pretty good format right now.
It
I
hasn't been
bang
this
my
good in
computer.
so
That's
long.
the least playing standard. So.
All right. Well,
fair.
let's kick it on down to Legacy then. We must make at least passing mention of the fact that Reed Duke is in all the top 8s. This event was won by one Travis Gibson playing the Rug Delver, the Delver that consumes all of the formats. Nom nom, delicious. I think, from what I was able to determine, I would say the big story of the tournament, well, was sort of two stories. It was there were a ton of Maverick decks that did very well, and also a lot of people played Merfolk, which may or may not have been related.
Shocking stuff. News at 11.
Yeah, I'll leave it up to you guys to draw your own conclusions in your own individual segments. But yeah, I think Maverick did very well. Also, there were a couple Miracles decks. I mean, these aren't new. They've been showing around since the GPs like a couple weeks back, and they were in the last Star City Open. But they're continuing to show up, and I want to talk about them a little bit as well. But let's talk about Maverick first, I guess. Steven, you get to go about Maverick. You have anything to say?
There's not that much you can say that's new about Maverick, right? They're playing...
Well, I mean, do you think that it just did well this week because of some like isolated factor? Or yeah.
Yeah, like, I am not super in touch with the East Coast scene, so I don't know how big metagame thing it is, because I know that with Legacy, who has which deck can often be a pretty big thing. But certainly, like, yeah, you beat Merfolk. I think most decks do pretty well against Merfolk. I think Maverick does especially well against Merfolk. It's nice that you don't have islands, obviously. I was surprised not to see more Rug Delver, although actually looking at the deck list now, I guess there's like 5 out of 25 there on the first page. But I thought that, like, to me, in that metagame, if you told me that's the metagame is going to be, I would have been going with Rug Delver, and I would have been playing like a few more Snapcasters and Lightning Bolts than usual. And I just think that Rug Delver has much better matchups against like the rest of the field. So that's what I would have been doing. But yeah, I'm not surprised to see Maverick there. I'm not terribly surprised to see that Merfolk is not there, although it started somewhere in the tournament. Who knows where it ended up. Yeah, and then the rest of the top 8 is, you know, the blue-white control decks. That's one of the reasons that I would be playing Rug instead of Maverick, because I think that those sort of eat you alive if you're a Maverick. Although, one managed to knock out Reed Duke, so who am I? And one Storm deck made the top 8, and thankfully Adam's here, so he can actually talk about it this week, maybe. Because I think we established the last time Storm made top 8 that Glenn, Cedric, and I have no idea what that deck does. Absolutely no clue.
I actually do now. Who's next?
You get to be next.
Yay! Yay! So here's the thing about Legacy, and I love Legacy so much. It's my favorite format. I'm not really surprised to see Merfolk get shit on this weekend because LOL Maverick No Islands GL is like the easiest thing to say. But here's what I don't understand. Like, we have like all these Maverick decks. Like, you're coming in this tournament and you know like a healthy amount of people are going to play Maverick. Like, you know that Todd Anderson's going to play Maverick because he's like the Maverick champion. And you know like a lot of people are going to play Maverick because like the deck isn't terribly expensive. It's relatively good. And it like beats up on Merfolk and does like a really good job against Rug Delver. So like, why aren't more people just like sacking up and just playing like Storm or Belcher or just like combo decks and just being like, fuck you, man. Like, I'm Mother of Runes, you're dead. Like, I don't understand.
That is a nice 1-1.
Yeah, I don't understand what's going on. Noble Hierarch, that's adorable. You're dead, actually. I don't understand what's going on. And like, you have like these like land tax control decks that Reed Duke is playing, and God bless his heart, it's the worst deck I've ever seen. I don't understand what this deck does. I can promise you it can't beat like Duress or like a Storm player that has a functioning brain. Like, he has like 5 ways to interact with you or something. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me that like more combo isn't being played. Like, the Euro metagame just has like all these combo decks, and like in Europe, Storm has won 2 separate Grand Prix, and it just doesn't make sense to me that like over here we're just like, oh yeah, Night of the Reliquary, punching the Tarmogoyf, and oh yeah, I'll trump you by playing Terminus, and it's just like, what? Dark Ritual is legal. It's a legal card. Why is no one playing it? It doesn't make any sense. I would be playing combo like it's not close, and I know we had our Storm discussion in episode 1 when Adam's computer in Canada blew up, and the discussion that we had was like, when you look at a Storm deck, how do you know if a Storm deck list is good? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I broke it because I decided to play with it and see if it was good. And lo and behold, the deck's fucking retarded.
Do you have a newsletter I could subscribe to for your like playing the deck to verify strategy?
Like, I just started playing it yesterday online, and I got like 7 matches in, and each match that I lost wasn't because my opponent like did something and I was like, I can't beat that. It was because I'm fucking stupid is why I lost. And I was just like running my cards into daze for no reason when I could just wait and then kill him the next turn. So like every game that I lost, I was like, how did I lose? Did he like play Cathalia and I couldn't beat it? Or did he play like a rule law? No. It's just because I'm dumb and I lost. Which leads me to believe that if I'm not dumb, how the fuck is anyone going to beat me? Which is what the guy at Get did. He went like, yeah, I'm not stupid, you lose. And then everyone lost. So why aren't more people just like taking the time to figure out how to play this deck, and then everyone just loses? Like the guy who played Storm in the top of this deck, his deck looks terrible. Absolutely terrible. 4 Tendrils of Agony, I can promise you that's wrong. I know I'm just learning how to play Storm. I know something. That's not correct. 4 Passion Flames? 4 Passion Flames when everyone's trying to beat Reanimator and Dredge? Like, when you come to a Legacy tournament, you're just like, you know what, I'm not losing to Gristlebrand no matter what. It's not happening. I have these relics and these Tormod's Crypts and other stuff, and you're like, oh yeah? Passion Flames. Ruin the Graveyard. Fuck! I'm dead. Why would you play Storm like that? Doesn't make any sense. So, if people just, like, take the get list and, like, practice with it, like I'm doing right now because it's completely bonkers, when your opponent plays Mother of Runes, or if your opponent plays Goblin Lackey, or if your opponent plays Aether Vial, you get to laugh at them, because those cards are embarrassing, and then they die. And I'm not, like, the biggest advocate of combo and Legacy all the time, but, like, right now, when, like, people are, like, terminusing and casting land tax, you have to be kidding me. Why aren't we just storming them out of the goddamn building and then laughing at them when they get their 3 planes? Like, come on. It just seems so easy to me. I don't know. But I don't know, this is how I feel like. Like there's a Magic Online Championship series and it's Legacy in 2 weeks. And I'm just testing Storm. and I'm just like gonna figure it out, and I'm gonna eventually stop making these mistakes. And, like, I don't mind making mistakes; it's how I learn. But eventually, I'm just gonna like stop making mistakes, and then all my opponents are going to die. And then at the end, I feel like I'm just gonna be like in the finals or like in the top 8 or something, and then I'm gonna kill all those people, and they're gonna be paying like Knight of the Reliquary and like all of these bad cards. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why we're fighting over like how to beat Maverick and how to get the edge on these decks and how to cast your terminates correctly, when you should be worrying about like, what happens if my opponent casts Dark Ritual? Fuck, I'm dead. That is just my opinion. My rant is over now. Glenn, you have to top that.
I will not be topping that. But you did touch on a number of good points, I think. I do agree that Storm is like pretty, and other combo decks like it, I should say, but Storm is one of the good ones. I would think that it's one of the top like 2 at a minimum, or 3 maybe, I don't know. But very good deck. It is very hard, and I think that Storm is one of the decks that loses a gigantic percentage of its play to its own mistakes because it's so complicated. You're only like half playing Magic, and then you're half playing yourself to figure out the right math, and it's pretty easy to get lost. I know that the guy in top 8 actually got eliminated by like just getting Scavenging. He was like dead when he like ritualed with a Passing the Flames in the yard, and then it just got removed, and he was dead. Like,
someone had like a Graveyard Hate card against his 4 Passing Flames deck in Legacy.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, it's not even. Obviously, like, we can malign the Passing Flames and stuff, but like, it's not even necessarily that like he was dead because he was a Passing Flames deck against a Graveyard Hate card, but it was like he just played to die. Like, he literally went to Hellbent with Passing the Flames in the graveyard and not enough mana to cast it, and there was a Scavenging he was in play, or something like that. Was how Oren, who was the one who beat him, like narrated the situation, and it was like, I mean, that's probably not the state you wanted to build the game to. Like, on a scale of like 1 to winnable game states, that's a 1. So I think that there are a lot of good Storm lists. I haven't played Storm myself, like the Gent deck. I'm just not that interested in learning to play it. I don't play enough Legacy or have opportunities to do it for it to be a valuable set of tools for me. As much as I would like to get that much better at Magic, I don't really have it in me at the moment. So I think that Storm is better than advertised, and it should do better, but people make mistakes. It's a really hard deck. It's really hard to play that deck well for like 9 straight rounds plus a top 8 all in a day. Like, that's a real thing. Fatigue will wear on your ability to play the deck. I would be interested, you're going to stream, I assume, some testing with it or something, and like playing it for like, multiple hours at length, like, could be a pretty interesting way to examine your own play on that one, Cedric, because I'd be curious as to how hard the deck gets to play, like once you're in the 6th hour, the 7th hour, like, does it change? I would think it does. Like, I'm dumb enough that it would change, so I don't know.
I mean, for me, like, I've never found, for me personally, and I know Adam and I had like a discussion about this over the weekend, fatigue does not play a factor into like my Magic tournament or something. Like,
interesting.
When someone is just like, ugh, I lost because I didn't sleep yesterday, that is just like the biggest crock of bullshit to me.
Oh, no, not like that. I mean, it's a lot easier to make like a smaller oversight. I mean, like, like you storm and you like get grabbed the wrong card in like a key moment or something, or like you play the wrong ritual in the wrong order and get dazed in a spot where it matters versus not mattering or something. That's the kind of concern I could see cropping up.
Yeah, I just feel like if that happens, you just don't have enough experience with the deck. More so than
Maybe.
like it's been like a long day, and basically what happens when you're playing like a math-based deck like that, like there are only so many cards you have to play around. So like you should know the iterations of like those particular cards you have to beat. Like there are only like 3 or 4 prevalent cards in like Legacy, like as far as counter Magic goes. There's like Daze, Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, Force of Will, as like the prevalent cards you have to like learn how to play around, and then then you have to like maybe after sideboard figure out like how you're gonna be a Thalia, how you're gonna beat like a Mind Break Trap or something like that. But like if you've tested the deck enough, like the iterations of like the cards that A, people are gonna be boarding in, and the cards B that people are gonna have in their main deck that can disrupt you, and then like you should just know what to do in those situations. And it shouldn't be about like agonizing about like I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this spot. It should just be like second nature to you. Like, okay, like if guy has Spell Pierce, I have to go this route. If guy has Daze, I have to go this route. If guy has Force of Will, like I'm dead or I'm not dead. And then like you should just know what you have to do.
Okay. I think that's fair to say. It's definitely a deck you want to practice with. It's not the pick up the tournament deck, which is like really kind of my point as to one of the reasons it doesn't show up that much in Legacy, where a lot of people are either playing a deck they know very well, and most people don't like hardcore play Storm. They're not all Ari Laxes, or they're borrowing a deck because they came to play Standard and it's all they could find. So, like when those are the two schools of deck building that are happening at these tournaments, you're not going to see necessarily the best deck winning the tournament a lot of the time because that's a constraint. Maverick doing very well. It was pretty predictable. I assumed Maverick would be the third most popular deck in the field. I assumed it would be behind Merfolk and Rug. I thought it might be possible it would get ahead of one of those decks. So it was one of my big picks for the tournament, and I knew I wanted to be playing a deck that was well positioned against it. Travis Gibson, who won the tournament, Billy Gibson, as we occasionally may refer to him, as his DCI name is a little different, I think. But Travis is actually a buyer for Star City Games. He works from Kentucky. He used to work in Roanoke, and he came into Roanoke to test before this event. And we played some games, and Grim Lavamancer was like one of the things that was definitely super key for those matchups, specifically Merfolk and Maverick. Like, you expect yourself to be one of the top 3 decks in the field, and you want to beat the other 2, like that's pretty important. And Grim's not even a brick in mirrors. It's not great, but it's something that if they have the 4th bolt or lightning bolt, like they're probably going to want to wind up pointing it at it, and you have Delvers, so that's too many cards that don't have that many lightning bolts. Grim Lavamancer was probably a real overperformer for Travis, I would say. I haven't actually talked to him because I was asleep when he left to go to work this morning. He was staying at my house and got in pretty late, so I assume Grim performed. I heard that it did, and I would cite that as like a big reason that deck did so well on the weekend, with Maverick and Merfolk being like the 2 big ones. I really liked Travis's list for that tournament. I myself sleeved up Grim Lavamancers in a much inferior deck because I could not stand the idea of playing Rug Mirrors after playing a few against Travis. Not that I did poorly, but it was just not fun. And I went back to my Price of Progress roots, which certainly ended with me dying to a Rug deck in round 1 in a fitting sense of justice.
So I'm just amazed that like last week Cedric was explaining how he potted for 5 when he meant to pot for 6, and then he does this like visual thing where like, yeah, I do this. I just do this for 5 minutes until the judge tells me I can't do this. Like, and now you're like explaining to me the equities of the Storm deck and how like it's math based and round 11 you'll be totally fine. Like, I'm gonna be interested to see how this works out, Cedric. I'm looking forward to the story when you win. When you win the tournament.
Fine. You are making a very valid point that I really can't argue with. Yeah. I understand that. So I will make an interesting story. I will tell an interesting story really quickly. Because Steven, I know you didn't know me at this point, and Adam, I don't know if you were following Magic, and Glenn, you may or may not remember this. Grand Prix Oakland 2010. Leading into that tournament, I played Dredge for 3 weeks straight for 7 hours a day. And the reason I did that is because at Worlds in Rome the previous year, I was 8-4 going into day 2. I was still in top 8 contention. I had a 6-0 to make top 8, and I played Dredge. And every round, I draw my opening 7 cards, and I just go, I don't know if I'm supposed to keep this hand. I don't know what I'm doing. I know my deck's real good, but I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And my opponent would be like, hey, do you know how to play your deck? And I'd be like, no. And my opponent would be like, that's pretty inconsiderate, don't you think? For me to have to like sit here and just wait for you to make your play, you not having any idea what you're doing? And I'm like, absolutely. And I'm sorry, but I'm stupid. And Simon Gertson, who I did not know at the time, he actually ended up winning Pro Tour San Diego, the next PT after that tournament, called a judge on me like 5 times. And was just like, yeah, Judge, you can't do that. Judge, you can't do that. Judge, you can't do that either. Because, like, he knows how the deck works. And I'm just like, man, I feel like a fucking prick right now. So I learned... So him calling me a judge a bunch while I was very mad then made me, like, learn how to play Dredge. And so I sat at home and I would just motive like 7 hours a day and just grind and just make all these mistakes. And I was just learning at such an insane capacity that by the time Grand Prix Oakland came around, I didn't have to think about a single turn. I was just, every turn, I was just like, yeah, like opening 7, I know if I have to keep, I know I have to mulligan. Every matchup, I know what I have to accomplish. I know what every person is sideboarding against me. They're sideboarding face down. To me, they're sideboarding face up. I know every card they're boarding it. And when you're like that with like, when you're playing a deck like Dredge or like Storm that is super complicated and you have that understanding of your deck, like, it's, like, impossible to lose. And, like, that's what, like, the guy in Ghent had with Storm. And that's what I want to have, like, with Storm. So, like, when I was playing Birthing Pod, like it wasn't because I was tired. It was because like I had played the deck one time, and then I didn't really know the lines of all the stuff I could do. I just knew that like the stuff that I was doing was like super powerful, and that I'd probably be able to kill him if I did something. And so I was trying to figure out what to do. I was definitely not well versed in playing that deck, and as I've told a lot of people, I was surprised that I won that PTQ, because going to that PTQ, like that PTQ was more for testing, and then this previous weekend there was a PTQ Saturday in Portland and a PTQ yesterday in Seattle, and I was expecting to win one of those. It just so happened that my deck was so damn powerful I was able to win with it. But like playing Storm, I don't plan on having like the head and hands turns. Like that's not going to happen. It's just going to be like I know what to do. Like I'm just going to be playing it nonstop until the MOCS, and then either I win the tournament or I don't. Which is like how you have to be when you're playing one of those Storm decks. You shouldn't have to. You should be well accustomed to the math and what's going to happen.
All right.
Sure.
So I'm going to give you 10 seconds about like Maverick in this tournament real quick before I move on. There was a lot of Merfolk. Merfolk gets the shit beaten out of it by Maverick. That's why Maverick did really well. I want to talk about Storm like a lot because you guys said just like the dumbest things in the universe like in the first episode when I was disconnected, and it was physically painful to me to like watch them.
Excellent.
Like there's this really massive sort of pervasive opinion about combo decks, especially like vintage/legacy combo decks that really sort of go deep in terms of like being powerful and accessing your whole library every turn and like being able to go off from very early in the game and play a whole bunch of weird cards. That like this is a fundamentally different form of Magic, and like I need to learn how to do this strange voodoo that like people who perform the Storm rituals do, and then I will gain the power to kill them on turn 2. And like I've never found that to be the case at all. And like maybe it's because I'm like a lunatic and just like one of those weird crazy Storm initiates. But like, and I mean I love me a combo deck. Like I would rather be playing combo in Legacy or Vintage than any other deck, even in Standard, although Standard combo decks tend to be kind of shitty. Like, not that they're bad, but they're like a boring combo that's not interesting to play most of the time. But like, it's always struck me that a combo deck is exactly the same as playing like an aggro deck or a control deck to me. Like, it's the same decisions to me. I'm just like I'm looking at them and I'm looking at the decision tree. I'm like, what can I do? How can I do it? What can I play around? Like, what can I beat? What can I not beat? And it's never been any different for me, like, at all, playing those decks. So I just like I don't know. I hear people like ranging from people who don't play Magic to like people who are very, very good at the game who are like, oh, I can't play that deck. My brain doesn't do that, and like I can't identify with that at all. Like there is nothing I would rather be doing than playing a combo deck and like trying to think through all of my decisions. Like when I'm going off on my turn, I want to know every single thing that's going to happen before I cast a spell. So, like, yes. I cast a spell, and they do anything that they could possibly do, and I know what I'm going to do before they've done it. So, like, they do it, and I'm like, okay, well, I respond with this. And, like if you do something, and then they have something, and then you're like, well, I gotta go in the tank for 5 minutes, that means you haven't played the deck enough, or you haven't, like, thought it through well enough. Like, I don't know, I agree, like, very largely with what Cedric said, and I'm not sure who kidnapped him and replaced him with the body double in that episode of this episode, but, like, I don't know, like, people say all these things, so, like, I can't play this deck, it's too tough, people are like, oh, there might be something wrong with the sound on your XSplit, that would be kind of bad for a podcast.
Yeah, just have to mute, unmute on XSplit, and it's fine. It happens on my stream a lot.
Yeah.
I muted and unmuted stuff. I hope it's better.
I hope it's better. Like,
yeah, that's good.
All right.
I don't know. I've never identified with that, like, sort of weird Magic duality. I don't think, like, I think there are a lot of sort of misconceptions about how people think about Magic. I don't think that aggro is easy, and, like, I don't think control is necessarily, like, much harder to play than aggro, and, like, people spout that shit all the time. But, like, I also don't think combo is, like, bizarre voodoo and doesn't apply to the other two, and I don't think, like, it's not... I've played a lot of combo decks in, like 7 to 10 round tournaments, and I've never found it to be more difficult than playing aggro decks. Often a lot easier, because your rounds are shorter. But, I found playing Delver to be way harder than playing most combo decks. Because every turn is like 5 decisions, and there's nothing I hate more in Magic than that thing that Cedric described in like, I like the PT. There's nothing I hate more in Magic than like looking at a decision and knowing I don't have a fucking clue what I'm supposed to do. Like, that is what I hate the most.
So I don't... So I think what both of you guys are describing is both of you are describing picking up a deck and developing rules and understanding shortcuts, what have you, to understand how to play the deck. And you look at a Storm deck and you play the cards out and you understand. And you know the relevant cards to play around and you know how to play around them and all this. And it becomes easy for you to do it. And you are cognizant of yourself doing it and you feel like you're doing it right. I just don't believe that you are doing it right, I guess, is what I would say. And I've played a hell of a lot of Storm decks. I've never played a Tendrils deck. I've played Brain Freeze decks, and I've played Ascension decks. Ascension most recently. And I am familiar with what you're describing, where you like know what your cards do. There was a great turn I had against Twin where like, okay, so Twin is going to try to kill me turn 4. I have 1 land up and I have 2 Twiddles in hand, so he like Pester Mites, taps my land, I untap a different blue source, and in his upkeep I twiddle down his other land, put a counter on Ascension, go off the next turn. And that's like awesome. And that might sound really thrilling to other people, but to me in the moment it was like extremely obvious, because obviously this like these are the 2 things that matter and this is what's going to happen when I do it. But the thing that is just like, the thing that you don't actually, I think, necessarily remain cognizant of as you're building up all these rules and understandings of what the other cards are and so on, is you're not necessarily picking up on small things like a Ponder the wrong way or a Manamorphose that adds the wrong color. This deck, I guess, doesn't have Manamorphose in it, but some Tendrils decks do. You're not necessarily like... you therapy wrong and you just think to yourself, well, that's because, you know, that's the card that I therapy for in this matchup and it seemed like his hand had that card in it. I think that if you look at someone playing Storm almost perfectly, he's going to hit with that therapy. And you're just going to dismiss it like, whatever, I got unlucky. That's why I say that playing Storm just like completely ruins my mind and is very, very, very difficult. I understand what you're saying though. I just think there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes in Storm.
I can kind of buy the rote repetition though. Like, yeah, it's the same principle behind, you know, like practicing the same shot over and over and over, so that like in the game, you know, you're not thinking about how do I make this game-winning shot. You're thinking about, all right, who's going to get the rebound after I make this game-winning shot, because I've made the shot like a billion times. I don't have to think about this shot, like, or whatever, you know. So it's kind of weird. Like, I can get behind the idea of rote repetition, especially in Storm, because there are situations like you should know the card that's going to beat you. You should know blah blah blah, like every aspect of it. But I think that is probably just the biggest barrier to Storm, is that that's a difficult level of thing to actually accomplish. So
we're canceling our future segments for Fight with Steven time? That's what Adam just told me.
Well, like, I mean, we're an hour and a half deep in this. I mean, if you want to, like, I'll sit here all day because I don't do a single thing with my life, but, like, I don't know if anyone wants to watch.
Joy of joys.
Adam, like,
yeah.
I extremely doubt that we actually disagree on this.
I like, could not more violently disagree with all of what you just said.
Okay.
Like,
Disagree with
you
me.
characterized my discussion as saying that, like, Storm, you know everything that's going on. Like, what you described was you cast a Ponder, and then it's hard to order the cards in Storm because there are a lot of interactions. It's hard to cast Ponder in every deck.
Absolutely.
And what I said was that, like, it's no different in Storm than it is in every other deck. Like, I didn't say I can play Storm 100% perfectly. I said that playing Storm is the same as playing every other deck.
Okay.
And, like, it's hard to resolve Ponder in all
So,
of those decks.
I agree with that like 100%. The reason that Storm is tougher for me to play, given that, is that every single mistake you make there is an equity loss one way or an equity gain the other way, depending on if you made the decision perfectly right or perfectly wrong. You are never in a situation in Storm just about where the game is won or lost and you are relaxing. Every single decision is equity one way or the other, and that...
But that's Magic with every deck.
No,
like,
it's
how is
not.
that not the same for you?
There are like huge amounts of Magic decks where you get to turn 3 or 4 and you can look at a decision and like you already won. Who cares?
Yeah, and that's unbelievably boring. Why would you want to be doing that?
Okay.
Like, I don't understand.
Well, it's different. It is different.
It's like, boy, I'd rather be playing these games where my decisions don't matter. That sounds sick.
I mean, I'm a Storm player, Adam. I also enjoy playing Storm decks, but claiming that playing a Storm deck is like just like playing other decks, I think you're missing that every single tiny decision has like equity shifts. And when you're looking at a game state for a Storm deck versus another deck, and you're analyzing their range and you're segmenting their range, so like maybe you're 72% confident of Force of Will or something like that, and you're casting this Ponder, you're getting into hugely mathematically intimidating equity equations, like looking at those 3 cards and stuff like this, which you don't actually do with other decks nearly as often.
I don't know. I don't agree with that at all. Like,
Okay.
I think that you put, like the situation you're describing is you're 72% certain that your opponent has a card that interacts with you in some way, and you're casting Ponder. And I can give you like 23 examples from a 4-round Standard tournament in which that comes up playing Standard Delver. Like, I am 72% certain he has a card which interacts with me in some way, and I'm resolving Ponder.
And the 3 cards you put back matter. Like, so can you tell me which equity each of the 6 possible orders are?
Well, like, no, but I
Okay.
couldn't do that, like, with either one. Like, I don't know. I don't understand why you're describing it as a different situation. It's like, yes, you have fewer lands, so your decisions are slightly different because your deck construction is slightly different. But you're putting your opponent on ranges of cards that interact with you in both formats, and, like, you're making decisions based on how certain you are that your opponent has or doesn't have a card with you in both. Like, I don't know. It seems like the same thing to me. I'm not, like, I feel like I'm not fundamentally understanding your argument.
Okay, I'm not like fundamentally disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I think edges get smaller and more finicky in Storm.
I can agree with that. For sure.
And who says that we only agree on this show?
I try and minimize my disagreements, like my full-on disagreements with Steven as often as possible, because we had this, like, I remember this really crystal clearly, this one argument we had about Blue-Green Storm like 7 years ago in Extended, which is a deck that we both played like a massive amount. Like, probably at least the entire like volume of my streamed Magic content I played with like that one deck in that one Extended season. That, like, and the end result of that argument was Steven like literally reading me the text from a Magic card.
Twin
He was
cast?
like, I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. That was very helpful.
I mean, Twin cast, I didn't literally read it to you. I summed up basically what it does. Basically what Twin cast does is it copies target spell. You can choose new targets for that spell.
It's more
There
of
are,
a
like,
paraphrasing than anything
there
else.
in the world right now where if you went up to them, or if I went up to them and started reading them twin cast, they would collapse into helpless laughter. So, like, and that is the legacy of when I argue with Steven about Storm decks.
We have gone so far off the rails.
It's where we're living, man. It's where
This
we're
is
living.
real important for Adam and I, obviously. Obviously, there's a little history here.
All right, boys, break it up. We've got a few more topics we have to go over.
Well, I think the only one that we're going to bring up, like, we're definitely not talking about both of our side topics today unless you're willing to go real deep. And I believe the consensus was of the two we were going to talk about coverage, just sort of in the Magic world in general. I don't know how deep you want to go on this. Like, this is something that I would be more than happy to devote like more than 20 minutes to. But I don't think we have too much time.
On the other hand, there's not going to be a whole lot of weekends that are better for side topics than this. It's a pretty light weekend. If we can't do it this weekend.
To be fair, next weekend's pretty dry too.
Oh, it is? All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, like, there aren't any more GPs until the end of August, basically. So, like, we
But
can...
don't forget about Gen Con, though. You've got the world
That's
thingy.
true.
Is
Well,
that
we
next
can-
weekend?
No, that's just in August. It's before the end of August. That's why I brought it up.
Okay, sure.
I think we can touch on it like at least a little bit, and maybe we won't finish the discussion. We'll come back to it next week or something like that. But I just wanted to talk about Magic coverage in general, especially since we happen to have Glenn here, and Glenn probably knows more about coverage, certainly than I would expect myself to. He's actively involved in producing the coverage for a pretty major place. Like, obviously, we're not going to ask him the deep, dark, and dirty secrets, the delas he keeps to keep everyone in line. But since Magic coverage is evolving fairly rapidly, and things seem to be moving forward at a reasonable clip, you have sort of streamers popping up and becoming more popular. And also, Wizards is stepping up their coverage and sort of stepping into it with Star City in the broadcasting arena. What do you guys think about Magic coverage in general and where we are going forward? I'm going to start with... Let's start with Cedric.
Yay! Alright, so I'm going to try not to run anyone through the mud here, because they are my colleagues, and I'm going to try to be professional and nice in this particular subject. So here's the thing. There's a pretty big difference between Wizards coverage and the Star City coverage. I liken it to, if you guys are familiar with poker, and Steve, I know that you are, obviously, the World Poker Tour versus the World Series of Poker. I consider
Cedric,
World Series...
I'm not familiar with poker coverage. That shit is unwatchable. Oh my god.
All right,
How would
that's
you...
fair. That's fair.
But continue with your point, please.
Okay, so like the World Series of Poker is like a very general tournament. It's on ESPN. It has two morons doing the cast, and Norman Chad and I can't remember the other guy's name. But their job is to make it that the coverage is very general and assume that the viewer knows nothing, because a lot of the people are going to know nothing, and it's to come in and hook the people. So they have to do coverage on a rather elementary level, which is fine. You know, it's difficult for the people who play poker for a living to watch, because, you know, they're not really providing anything for those people. But that's not their target audience. So I understand when, you know, they do things on an elementary level, like they have to do that because it's for a very general audience who doesn't know very much. Nice gun to the forehead, Steve. I just saw that. When you're watching the World Poker Tour, where it's like a circuit, and it's more for, like, you know, the grinders or the people who want to be good, and like the poker players are going to seek, like, people who play poker or care about poker are going to seek that coverage out because they find poker to be interesting to them. Whereas with the World Series of Poker, like, you're just going to turn it on because, like, it's on ESPN, and like, ooh, like, I've played poker with my friends, so I'm going to watch that. Whereas, like, the World Poker Tour is, like, much more serious, and they're going to be talking about more legitimate things, which is what I feel like the Star City coverage is. It's just, like, more geared towards people, like, who are well-versed in Magic. Okay? So with that being said, the coverage has to be different because you're going to be targeting different audiences. What is unacceptable in both forms of this coverage is the following. One, not knowing what the cards do. That's not okay. And you should not be paid to do coverage if you don't know what the fucking cards do. So when I'm watching coverage, and once again, I'm not going to name names, but when I'm watching coverage and someone doesn't know that Thragtusk gains 5 life and not 3, and someone doesn't know that Battlecry gives +1/+0 and not +1/+1, or it gives +1/+0 and not +1/+1, and when they are wondering if their opponent is going to sacrifice Blade Splicer to Birthing Pod to get Huntmaster of the Fells, when they're playing Band Pod and they have the deck list in front of them, that's not okay. That's not okay. And what drives me up a wall, just because of the way that I was raised and the way that I do the jobs that I do when I have a job, is I take my work very seriously. So when I am employed to do something or someone is paying me to do something, I make sure that I prepare and that I am well versed in what I'm doing. So that when, for example, when Star City has me fly out to do an event, I'm going to make sure that I know all the decks of the format, the cards of the format, the players of the format, what the storylines are of the tournament, and that sort of thing. So that when you, the viewer, tunes in to watch the coverage that I'm providing, you're not tuning in. You're tuning in because you like Magic, but you're also tuning in because you want the storyline, you want something to care about. If you like Magic, chances are you're just going to go play Magic. But if you want to watch Magic, you want a reason to watch other than, like, that's something that you like. You want something to care about when you're watching it. I was talking to Wizards employees this weekend at the PTQ in Seattle, and we were just talking about coverage and, how we can make it better and, what's the difference between the audiences and that sort of thing. And in talking about trying to create storylines and, the decks can be the storylines, the players can be the storylines, what have you. But at the very least, there has to be storylines for people to care about. The example that I gave, and you guys can tell me if this is a good example or not, is when you're watching a football game. And let's say it's a relatively good team versus a team whose season has fallen apart and they're not so good. Their quarterback is certain, they're playing with their backup, whatever. And it's on Monday Night Football. And, they have to make the best of what they're given. It's like week 12, and it's like a team who's 3-9 versus a team that's 10-2. And for all intents and purposes, we're all pretty sure the 10-2 team is going to crush this team. But there's a chance that the 3-9 team can win, and you want the people watching at home to want to watch this game, so you have to build some sort of storyline. So then you're going to have to build the storyline of maybe the underdog can win. And then if the underdog actually is playing very, very good and they happen to do win, it's fantastic. And people are watching this game not because they like football, but like, they're hearing from their friends like, holy shit, like an underdog is coming back, so that's like pretty cool. And like this team that should not be beating this 10-2 team is winning. And then you have a reason to watch, other than like, hey, I like football. It's like, hey, something like crazy's happening too. And it's just building storylines, which is like super, super important. But overall, outside of that, like what I do when I do coverage is I try to educate the people who are watching. So, like when they're tuning in, they have an idea of like what's going on, why a person is doing A, why a person is doing B, and that sort of thing. That's my goal. And if I can't do that, then I don't feel like I'm doing my job. So at the very least, I think that you should A, know what the cards do, B, know the players, C, know the format, and B, be able to educate viewers. Even if you're right or wrong in your lines of play, have a rationale for what you're doing, and then that will help and make the entire experience more enjoyable. That's all.
You want to go next, Steven?
Oh, I was
No?
actually pointing.
Oh, okay.
Are
Sorry.
you pointing up?
Oh,
Nice.
I'm happy to go next. I don't know, Glenn, do
Sure.
you have stuff to say to that?
directly responding to that? Not especially, I would
Okay.
say.
Well, I have some stuff directly responding if you, like, just have general things to say.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I can say pretty much anything. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
I
well,
can talk about any aspect of this topic that anyone is
I
interested
just-
in hearing. So.
I just wanted to say that, like, we all obviously have different perspectives and, like, personal opinions about who we like and who we don't like. And, like, I have my own opinions, as does Cedric, but that's not, like...
I like
That
how
wasn't
easy it is for you to say you hate
particular.
me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can hate you, like, right out there in the open. But, like, if I was talking about the progression of Stevens in general, like, I don't know if I would bring up that I hate you specifically, is sort of where I'm trying to go with this. Like, I could speak to why I do like or do not like a particular guy, but that's, like, not really where I want to go with this segment. Just, like, sort of what I'm trying to say here. Like, not that I do or do not agree with your point, but I just, like, I think that when we reach a certain critical mass, sort of as a broadcast Magic community, there comes a point where it's helpful and productive to be like, this is not okay, like, you can't present this to the community and expect them to just take it and, like, not ask for something better. But I'm not certain that we've reached that point yet. Like, there aren't really enough competing things offering coverage that we can be like, well, they'll just go out and watch this instead. Like, the amount of people that are watching a Star City live event or like a Wizards live event are comparable to like a large but not like massive StarCraft 2 or League of Legends stream. So like we're in the territory where we just don't have the viewership now that I'm certain we can be like these are the things which need to be better, and like it would be helpful for us to be like, this thing sucks, it needs to get better. Like I think there is a time for that, but I'm not certain if right now is that time. Like, do you disagree with that, Cedric? Like, because I'm interested to actually hear your point of view on this. Because like I think that is helpful and productive at some juncture, but I'm not certain that juncture is right now.
Summarize your point. I'm sorry. Summarize. Like, ask me a direct question. Because like you said a lot, and I'm not understanding exactly what you're asking me.
Do you think that we are big enough time, so to speak, as sort of broadcasting Magic events, that it is actively helpful to point out like mistakes from the coverage as opposed to like just suggesting more basic like improvements that can be made? Like are we big enough as like a show, or like are we big enough as like
a game?
Whole community as a game.
Yes, absolutely. I think we're big enough.
Okay.
That's one of the things that like has me overly concerned. Actually, is like as a game, and I don't know the exact number of people who play Magic the Gathering. You know, 3 million is like the number that like I threw out there. You guys can tell me if that's right or wrong or not even close. But let's say it's 3 million. Okay, and we have, 4,000 people tuning into the Star City thing, to the Star City SCG Live to watch a tournament. Like, is that a good number for like people to watch like that particular tournament? Because if you think of like League of Legends coverage and StarCraft coverage, what I think of, like, I don't play StarCraft, I don't play the fighting games of EVO, I don't play League of Legends. I still watch because like it's cool. So, like, when you think of, like, there are so many people that play Magic, and then we're only getting 3,000 people to watch these tournaments, like, I feel like the marketing and promotion for it just isn't good enough, because Magic is the biggest card game, like, biggest, like, trading card game. I know that poker is bigger, whatever. But, like, it should just be, like, we should have larger audiences. Like, there's no reason that StarCraft can be as popular as it is, and have people who don't watch it, and it just be, like, mainstream and acceptable, and then Magic isn't the same way when it's the biggest card game. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So yes, I think our community is more than large enough to like make these critiques and say like what should be changing and who should and should not be in the booth.
This is something I actually do want to talk about a little bit. One of the aspects, like coverage, Magic coverage, people think of it right now as like this thing that's been around a while, but like what we're doing right now is like completely new compared to what coverage has been for like my entire life. Like, literally, if you told me, like, 4 years ago that this job and the things I do at this job would be, like, an aspect of what I would do if I wanted to work in trading card game coverage, I would have been like, well, that sounds absurd and ridiculous and very not likely. But, here I am, and these are the things that are going on. So, in some ways, it's a very different market than what everyone currently working in it is expecting. And that's another part of it, is that all of the people who are doing the jobs that are important for coverage now, especially like video, media, like they're the same people. The guys who were writing the articles 4 years ago, they're the ones in the videos now. And that's a completely new thing. They're being asked to actually do different jobs than they've done like their entire lives. And that's one reason you see podcasters being like quick to take to it and being reasonably successful commentators, like even though they're new to this particular game, is because like their job was a closer analog to current Magic commentary than Magic feature match writing is to current Magic commentary. So in that regard, people are much fresher and greener to it than they might seem, Like, BDM has been around for forever, and he's probably one of the guys who adapted this stuff quicker and quickest because he's done this stuff with Pro Tours, etc. But, it's very different to do, like, a couple Pro Tours a year of commentary compared to, like, spanning GPs, developing these narratives, like going from event to event, marketing, coordinating, like, live coverage for every match, like all of that stuff is so different. So in that regard, it's a completely new kind of realm that everyone's working on, and it's talking about criticizing versus correcting, which I think was kind of a nice way to sum up what Adam was talking about. When I went to college, in my English classes, like I tutored for English for like remedial classes or whatever, and kids would bring their papers that got edited by the teacher and graded. They have these red marks where they misspelled this word or like did this grammar error or whatever in like the really remedial classes. And when I go over the paper, like I didn't tell them they misspelled the word. Like I told them why this paragraph didn't work as well as this paragraph, that sort of thing. Because there's a giant red mark on the paper. They know they misspelled the word. Like they don't need me to tell them. But they might not understand why their writing wasn't good. Like there's a difference between, like a typo and a bad idea, basically. And I think that a lot of the stuff that goes on in commentary, a lot of the things people call it are typos, and typos are bad. We don't want to make them. But like when we make them, we also know we made them. It's not like someone just, happens to be wrong about like everything they know about magic and they just say the wrong thing constantly because that's what they think is true. Like it's, a lot of it's live stuff, a lot of it's taxing. And people will make mistakes. I've definitely made some. Like, you got me on the forgetting there was a cavern in play. Like, I had to do that for 3 seconds to make the mistake that I made in, like, that feature match we were commentating in Vegas. But I did.
Sure.
Like, for 3 seconds, I forgot there was a cavern in play. And I said something that didn't make sense. And that's just going to happen. Like, I mean, it's not great. And it doesn't crop up as much in other sports because there's so much less, like, factual stuff going on the board. Like, no one's like, oh, well, he's definitely going to, shoot that ball at that basket. Oh, wait, I was talking about the wrong basket. My bad.
Oh, shit.
That's just not a realistic thing. So we're kind of used to it in different... We've seen this form of medium applying to things that are really different from what it's applying to now. So I agree with what you're saying. Like, we have the audience. We have a product. Like, obviously, I think we have a product. I'm producing it, and I love it. It's such a huge part of my life. And it's so taxing in many ways to improve it, but so rewarding too. We're always changing things. Like it's so like we have meetings, every other week talking about things we want to improve, things that didn't work. SCG is constantly reviewing. Like I listen to everything anyone says to me about our coverage. Like I see it. I'm in the chats a lot of the times during the events while I'm working. I'm reading the chats. So like if you're all over us, like I am reading it. I may not be replying to you, but I am reading it and seeing it. And it's none of it's going on deaf ears. Like, all of it's adding to us. And I think that coverage is improving. Like, if you look at us a year ago, like, we're so different. I mean, when I first came on, there wasn't an SCG Live. Like, when I first started doing this job, like, I started working in December 2010, like, for the first Invitational. That was, like, the first job I ever worked for SCG. And, like, none of this stuff was, like, a real thing, basically, and now it is. It's a whole brand even. Like it's actually like a whole new thing that never existed and is a thing now, which is cool. And I said thing a lot there, man. But that's impressive to me, and we've come a long way. And we're learning more and more. Up until like even 8 months ago, maybe even sooner, like 6 months, we weren't thinking about things that we think about now when we plan events, thinking about how to coordinate what we're doing from minute to minute with person to person, how some people work with other people, trying to maximize that. I know Cedric knows a lot about that. I've even talked to him personally, and he's contributed a lot to our group with that specific knowledge of how to help commentary. And especially commentator roles is a huge thing, It's been interesting for me because I've been a lot more active in the booth recently. If you've been to the events I'm at, like I'm almost always commentating a round or two because that's part of our new coverage model. And adapting to understanding what I should be doing in the booth versus what the viewers are expecting versus what my partner is expecting can be a huge thing. And I think it's really a two-man game, like they have to know what they're doing when they're doing it, and preparation is key, so is getting used to it, and it's not at a state where everybody's used to it, even the viewers. If we can obviously just go Malcolm Gladwell on it and be like, nobody's done 10,000 hours of this yet. Nobody's an expert at it yet. And that's never going to happen, obviously, taking it to hyperbole. But it is something that is constantly getting worked on, improving, and there are things that will make it better that aren't necessarily mistakes or criticisms, but just ideas. It's a huge, huge idea. So I think that's a reasonably good summation of how commentary can be improved, like actively. As for where it's going, I think it's going like huge, massive places. Like it's gonna be nuts.
I want to say one thing which is tangential, but I think it's hugely, hugely important when you're talking about Magic coverage. There's no scoreboard in Magic. Nobody in like 20 years or however long of Magic has worked out how to keep a score sheet of a game, which you can look at and tell what happened. And nobody has worked out how to display anywhere in any way a graphical thing which shows you what's going on. And that's like a huge, huge burden on the commentators to try to tell a viewer what's going on, to try to keep it in their head, when there's just like we don't even know how to graphically represent that. We like the stuff they did with sabermetrics in baseball, that would be so amazing for Magic. It would be so amazing if we had that for Magic, and it would improve Magic commentary just so much, and viewing Magic would be so much easier if you were able to get those stats. My vision of Magic coverage, if I could like, that was a really bad snap, but if I could snap my fingers, and then if snapping my fingers made the world how I wanted it to be, you would be able to mouse over the cards on the screen, zoom in, see what they did. There would be like a number of graphical interfaces that you could navigate through as a viewer, because we're doing this online. People are watching at their computers. There's no reason to be in a television model where like the viewer only gets to see one thing. As far as I can tell, like you can navigate through, see like this card is this. If somebody plays Merfolk Looter on turn 2 and M12 limited, they win the game 63% of the time, like just going by these results. Like John Finkel has won all of the top 8s that he's ever played in, every single time, no joke, but only when he's led with turn 1 Tropical Island. Like, you should be able to like reach that statistic, because there should be a database for Magic with all the score sheet information in it, and it should be rudimentary. Like, seriously, if you get the infrastructure in place, it's going to be absolutely rudimentary for someone to plug that statistic out there, like, in 5 seconds. If they want to know it, there's absolutely no reason that they can't. So when I watch Magic coverage, it's just sort of hard for me, because that infrastructure isn't there for Magic, and it's difficult to make. And I don't anticipate it being there terribly soon, but I really feel like you have to have that to watch Magic, and for other people to enjoy watching Magic when they haven't played Magic before, something like that is going to help. That's what's going to make it accessible to people to have some sort of like real scoreboard. I also wanted to say that there was a really interesting esports panel where like Day 9, Sundance Giovanni, the like CEO of MLG, the CEO of like Evil Geniuses, and the Blizzard guy, they were all talking about streaming for esports, which they actually mentioned Magic quite a lot in this panel. How it was like one of the next things was picking up streaming. They were talking about how streaming had really changed the landscape in esports, and it was this hugely disruptive technology and everything, all the growth statistics, all the stuff like that. I wanted to know, like, have you guys seen that panel? I know Adam has, because I've linked him to it. But if you guys are interested in this at all, I'll like post a link to it with the video if you viewers want to see it. I thought it was an amazing panel, and a lot of the stuff is directly analogous to Magic.
Well, since streaming is currently my job, and I'm trying to be the Day 9 of Magic, I don't think I could be more interested in wanting to see that.
It was amazing. You would.
I want to see it more than anything in the world, because I'm trying to help revolutionize like the game and turn it to the level that basically Day 9 did for StarCraft. So, I mean, you can send it to me on Facebook. You can post it in the chat right now. But yeah, I want to see that more than anything in the world.
Actually, yeah, it looks like I have it, and I can post it in chat right now. I hope this doesn't like kill stuff. Oh, here we go. Mike Morhaime. It's the Blizzard guy. Alright, so that's in chat. If you guys want to go watch that like after this, I think we're gonna like wind it up now. Yeah? Adam, do you have stuff you want to add?
I have one really brief point going back to something Cedric said about like how vast the Magic player base is. And like I sort of agree and disagree with that. Like I agree that the Magic player base is much larger than like a lot of people, especially people who aren't familiar with the Magic community, give it credit for. Like people just don't realize the sheer number of people that buy Magic products and like are involved with Magic in some way. Like they don't understand how pervasive the game is. But I don't think the number of people that are involved in that community in some way has translated directly online yet. Like, I don't think they're all here yet, basically, watching stuff online, like watching streams, watching coverage, and that's sort of the issue that I'm trying to bring up. Like, I think it'll get there, and we're working on it. We're sort of in the baby stages at this point, but I don't think we can apply that entire player base to, like, the coverage that we're seeing right now.
Well, I definitely think it's going to take time. The thing that is interesting about Magic is that the people, like, it's going to be like mean to say or whatever, but